Exercise 7 is the appendicular skeleton. So this is a continuation from last time. In this diagram, you can see the appendicular skeleton highlighted in the purple. It includes the arms, the legs, the pectoral girdle, and the pelvic girdle. It's just a way of separating out, making it a little bit easier to handle for studying the bones. With the pectoral girdle, that involves both the scapula and the clavicle. It's basically how you are attaching the arm to the rest of the body. And so the scapula, that is often commonly referred to as your shoulder blade, and the clavicle is the collarbone. So you can see in this diagram where the clavicle is held in place oftentimes by ligaments. This joint right here, as you can see, it only involves the clavicle, the scapula, and then the humerus, which is the upper arm bone. It's not very strong. A lot of these bones are held in proper positioning by muscles. It's a catch-22 where you have the bones come together to form a joint. It's a give and take. You either have mobility or you have stability. So with the shoulder, you have a big range of motion there, but that's not quite as stable in that joint. And so sometimes you can have a dislocation where one of those bones does move out of its proper positioning, which you're going to know it. But the clavicle, you can see on the lower diagram here, is kind of a curve to that bone. So for right now, for this class, I'm wanting you to be able to identify the various bones. Also, don't forget, there is that photo atlas that you have access to on Blackboard where all of the bones are highlighted as well, the ones that you need to know. The scapula has a lot of various what we call markings on it that allow, once again, for attachment of muscles, for the way the bones come together to form the joint. The acromion right here, this structure on the scapula right here, helps to form a major part of how it all fits together in the joint. And so be familiar with that marking on there. As we move down for the upper limb or the arm, you have got, start to notice some patterns here. Initially you have one bone, this is the humerus. Then you've got two bones, notice the position of them, and then with the hand you have multiple bones in there. So when we start at the top, the humerus, this is that upper arm bone. When you look at the bone, this rounded portion up here that we call the head, that's what fits into the shoulder. Down in this area right here is where you're going to have both the ulna and the radius fit into place to form the elbow. Now the radius and the ulna, initially looking at this, I know oftentimes people get them confused. They say, okay, I know these are in the forearm or the lower arm, the two bones, but which one is which? One thing that may help you is, number one, think of anatomical position. Yes, I know these bones naturally kind of cross over each other when you move the arm back and forth, but in anatomical position, the ulna is going to be the more medial or on the inside, going down towards the pinky. The radius goes down and connects towards the thumb. The other marking that you can look at is up here on the ulna. Right in here, there is this indentation. And from a side view, it almost looks like a U. We're not looking at the correct angle right here, but it almost looks like a U. So think U for ulna. That's where it fits into the humerus, forming that your elbow joint. In the wrist, in the hand, the wrist, there are 8 different bones. These are known as the carpals. you just need to know them as the carpals. If you take a more detailed course, you'll have to know all names of them. But they're generally arranged in rows of 4 by 4. So you have 4 across here and then 4 across here. But just collectively know it as the carpals. The bones that are across the palm of your hand, those are your metacarpals. And then the phalanges are the bones of the fingers themselves. Now you've got 3 different sets. You've got the proximal, the middle, and then the distal phalange. Except in the thumb, you only have the distal and the proximal. Once again, you just need to know metacarpals, carpals, and phalanges. Moving down now to the lower appendage with the legs, you've got the pelvic girdle that is going to attach the legs to the rest of the body. The pelvic girdle is composed of several different bones. Some of these are fused together. You have got the sacrum from, you've already seen this with the vertebral column. You've got the coccyx, which is right down here. You have got, to form the pelvis itself, you've got 3 bones. You've got the ilium, you have the pubis, and the ischium. Those will fuse together to form the pelvic bone. Very strong. It's transporting or transferring the weight from the upper body down. Now, there are some differences between the male and the female pelvis. So if you find just a pelvis, you could determine whether it was from a male or a female. And what are these differences? There's several different things that you can look at. Number one, look at some of the angles involved. If you look at what's known as the pubic arch, it is this angle right here. On a male, that angle is much, much smaller than on a female. In other words, it helps widen the hips for a female. The other thing to look at is the opening right here, the pelvic opening. It is much larger in a female than in a male. That's to help assist with childbirth, make it a little bit easier on the mom. So you notice that the hips themselves, the pelvic bones, in an adult female are a little bit wider, the angle, than on a male. Another thing to notice is, and this is seen easily with a side view or from underneath, and that's looking at the coccyx. On a female, the coccyx is pointed more straight down. On a male, it's curved inward more. So that if you fall, there's more protection for a male on that coccyx bone, or the tailbone, as commonly referred to as. And so for women, because it's sticking straight down, if you fall and you land on your backside, you have a better chance of breaking it. And so, yes, women have a higher risk of breaking their tailbone versus the males because of the angle of that. All of these differences are to assist with childbirth and also for being assistant for a female to be able to hold the extra weight throughout the pregnancy of that developing fetus. The lower limb, the leg, you've got the first in the thigh, you've got 1 bone. Then you've got your kneecap, then you've got 2 bones, and you've got the ankle and the foot bones. Start noticing some similarities between the arm and the leg here. So the femur is the bone that's found in the thigh, the upper leg. This is the longest bone in the body. It has to be able to transfer all the weight from the upper body down. A few markings that you will notice is at the top there's this large ball that's known as the head. That's where the bone fits in, forming that hip joint. You don't have the range of motion in the leg like you do with the arm, but it's very stable. As we move down to the lower leg, you've got the fibia and the tibia. The patella is your commonly referred to as your kneecap. That is kind of embedded in tendons and ligaments that are between and attaching the femur to the tibia. The larger of these two bones is the tibia because it is transferring the weight from the femur down. So it has to be thicker to be able to handle that excess weight. The fibula is the smaller of the bones. As you can see right here, the thickness it is much thinner. It's for muscle attachment. With the ankle and the foot, once again, you're going to see similarities to the wrist and the hand. The tarsals, these are 7 bones that come together to form the ankle. And then across the main part of the foot, you've got the metatarsals. And then in your toes, you have the phalanges, just like what you saw in the hand. You've got the proximal, middle, and distal phalange. And then the big toe only has 2 bones, similar to how the thumb only has 2 bones, just a proximal and a distal. So this shows the bones once again. Be familiar. Can you identify the bones in drawings?